which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good job, young man.
Good job.
Kiefer.
Kiefer. Got something for you. You can pass it.
Hey, brother.
From the mayor. Thank you. All right. Next is indication, this being given by Mike Starr. Governor.
If we can bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the privilege of being able to serve this great community. Thank you for the leaders that you've appointed to be able to serve the interests of this town. I pray that you would give them wisdom on this evening as they address the affairs of this community, that they would be able to serve you well and serve the people of Garner well. We thank you for all that you're doing in this community and for your hand of favor over our lives. It's in Jesus' name we pray and we thank you, Lord. Amen.
Look at your church doing. Tell us what your church is doing now.
Well, our church is steady growing, a great community of believers that are gathering and looking to care for the constituents of Garner. So we're partnering with the community in various ways with different events to just reach out into the community and love on the people of Garner.
Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Where is your church located?
It's located on Aversboro Road, right across from White Deer Park. So just south of the Timber Drive.
Okay,
Planet
okay.
Fitness.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is petitions and comments. This time on the agenda is anyone who wants to address the council on any item not on the agenda.
Need to call the roll.
Reading of the adoption of the agenda.
Move adoption of the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion made, second, all in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
No presentation. I want to call the roll now. Ask the clerk to call the roll.
Mayor Williams?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Marshburn?
Present, yeah, sorry.
Councilmember Behringer? Here. Councilmember Johns?
Present.
Councilmember Kennedy?
Here.
And Councilmember Singleton?
Here.
Okay. Presentation on consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Item number 7.
Move to approve with the exception of number 7. Second.
Motion made, second, all in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Okay.
Just for information on this surplus, is this item that we're getting rid of it out of commission or just something that we don't need anymore? We got one to replace it.
We got one to replace it. It's the older wheel loader. I think in this past budget we got a backhoe loader to replace it. You know the exact piece of equipment, Pam, or I know I saw the sheet, but I can't remember the exact.
I don't have the exact piece of equipment that replaced it, but
Yeah.
we did purchase a wheel loader this year. It's already been delivered. I believe that's the same piece of equipment that is now being surplused. And this one is about 10 years old, and they think they can get probably about $40,000 by selling it on surplus through the gov deals.
Okay. I was just concerned about it. That's the reason.
It was replaced as part of the VERT thing through the VERT process through the budget process this year.
Okay, thank you.
When you get ready for that, when you get paid for that, what happens to those dollars?
Those dollars come in as a revenue. We don't budget for surplus equipment through the year, but that does come in as a revenue and is available to you if there is something that comes in later in the year that you need to use it for.
I move that we approve item number 7 that was on the agenda. Second.
Motion made, second, all in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Okay, new and old business. Department heads. Police Department holiday pay.
All right, Mr. Mayor, Town Council, we want to continue the discussion of the police holiday pay, and holiday banking of hours. There were some questions. Well, we've talked about it a few times, but there were some questions after our last discussion, and we provided some more information, and going to give you an overview of the documentation that's in here. So the police chief, HR director, and finance director, we're all going to kind of team up and provide you some other information. To clarify some things, I think there were some questions about how the program works and how it works for officers that are working and how it works for officers that are not working on that day. So hopefully this will provide some clarification for you. So I'll call those three up, and then we can address it and answer questions as needed. And the way we've set this up is we have some information that hopefully will address some of the questions that you had, and then following that we have a sample policy that will be consistent with, depending on what action you take, it would be consistent with that action. And we have a clean copy, then we have one with strikeouts or strike through, so you can see how the existing policy changed versus what we're suggesting for the new policy. So we'll go through that. Go ahead and talk through that.
Did you want to start with the memo, sir?
Start with the memo on page 48.
Okay. So I think we need to give you a little bit of additional background or make sure that we have adequately explained sort of how the current program works. I think there was some question about police officers already being off on a holiday and why did they accrue holiday leave if they weren't working. So what you see in the memo is that employees that work traditional Monday, Friday schedules these days have always been scheduled on the actual holiday if it's on a weekday, or it's on a weekday closest to the recognized holiday if it falls on a weekend. So what you find is that for this year, for example, Christmas is on a Monday, so those three holidays fall on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. But if Christmas falls on a Saturday or a Sunday, that holiday is moved to a work day during the week for most employees in the town. So we say that to explain that, again, the employees are always off, but the holidays are not always on the actual day of the holiday, so there is some flexibility there to ensure, again, that every town employee gets 12 paid holidays, or essentially, I think it's easier to look at it as 12 paid days off in recognition of holidays that you choose to recognize through your annual process. So then what's different for the sworn non-exempt police officers, anyone at the rank of sergeant or under, is that they can't typically take many of those holidays because they're scheduled to work. And in the case if they're not scheduled to work, it's because they're coming back. If the holiday's on a weekday, then they're coming back that weekend to work or work another time. So they're given this holiday bank in lieu of those scheduled holidays because they don't have the flexibility to just be off because, of course, we're a 24/7, 365 operation. So by using the holiday bank, that equates to where the police officers get the same 12 paid holidays off during the calendar year that another town employee gets. They just take them at different times so that we can maintain staffing for minimum staffing and public safety purposes. I want to stop there and ask if there's any questions, because I'm not sure we've been as clear as we could have in the past on that. Mr. Kennedy?
Okay. I think that gets to a basic understanding, and I think that's exactly what we've been doing is all of this time is having discussion about how it's paid and what to do with the banking that's existing and the banking to come. And it finally becomes real to me that I'll just blame it on me, but what I see from the casual observer outside looking in and what the perception is versus what you see as reality from being on the inside, and whereas you're pretty clear on what you see and believe, and I have made myself believe I'm clear on what I see But what each of us sees, there's a gap. And I think the first thing will solve a lot is clearing up that gap of wrong perception. So I'll start with me on the wrong perception. To the casual observer, if somebody looked at it cold, the perception could easily be, and I'll use the word, and you just blame it on me, double dipping. I've been trying to get past that to understand that it is not double dipping. So when somebody, in the first roadblock I seem to get to is that you put the 12 days in the bank, and sometime in the first month or so, somebody's supposed to work on or somebody's scheduled to work or not work a holiday. Let's put, and I don't even know where it'll go, but somebody's working on that holiday. I can understand them getting paid. I think I can. But if they're getting paid, and I don't know whether they leave that bank in there, leave it that day in the bank and still get paid. But if they were off that day and not supposed to work, they still get paid. But I think I'm wrong. They get paid for ever how many days there are, regardless of what days they fall on. So I've laid out enough of it, made it confusing enough. Show us, tell us how that perception of double dipping is not there.
Can I just make a real quick comment? And it makes it clear to me, based on what you just said, once those sworn non-exempt police officers get their bank of time, the fixed holidays that the rest of the staff get no longer exist for those police officers. So they've been given the days which are now floating holidays, but on the actual day of the holiday, that doesn't exist as a holiday for them anymore.
So they lose that designation, not negative. That's the fundamental change, that there's no such thing as really as a designated holiday. They have to identify it and use it.
That's correct. So if they work that day, they get paid for the hours that they work. If they were scheduled to be off that day and they choose not to use time from their bank, then that would be very similar to what I would receive on a Saturday, which is a day off with no pay.
I think a couple things to just make sure that we're clear and on the same page. One is that we talk about holiday pay, but there is, at least in the police department, never a time when a police officer gets extra money for the holiday. So I think that's the first thing. There is no budget for that. There is no compensation for that. We're just talking about days off, paid days off. And I think that the more we can separate away from thinking of them as 12 holidays and rather think of them as 12 paid days off that recognize some holidays during the year, that also helps to get away from the frustration, I think, of they're off but they're still, taking another day and that sort of thing. And then the other thing I would point out is the holiday bank it's a bank, and it's dumped in at the first of the year primarily to give us the flexibility to be able to get through that time during the year. Because that, rather than wait till each holiday occurs, and particularly if you wait, for example, to not give Thanksgiving and Christmas until Thanksgiving and Christmas, then there's almost no time available to take those holidays for the number of police officers that need to burn it. So we give the flexibility of they can use it throughout the year, but then there's also a program in place or a method in place that if they leave employment during the year, that they either, going forward, they won't get compensated for anything, but right now, they don't get credit for any holidays that have occurred. So if I have a police officer that's here this January 1st, and then we give them a dump of 147 hours because they're a patrol officer, and then if they have burned, let's say 100 of those hours, so there's only 47 hours left, but they leave in March, we're going to take other pay, and Pam can describe this perhaps a little better than me, but we're going to take other paid leave or something else to essentially get that back because they never earned it. So they don't get anything they haven't earned, and if they leave early, we account for that.
Yes, we take it from their vacation leave if they have it, or we can't take it from their sick leave, but we can also reduce their pay. We can, if they had used 50 hours more holiday than they had earned through the point that they left, we would take 50 days from vacation. 50 hours, 50 hours from vacation. If they don't have 50 hours of vacation and or comp time, we can then reduce their final payout.
Okay. I'll admit that was my hang-up, and getting much closer to. Every time I think of a new idea, it's like go back to the beginning. What's the basic deal that when they start the year, it's forget you don't have designated holidays. You've got a bank, and it's potluck whether you wind up working on a Christmas Day or July 4th. You may or you may not. Irrelevant.
Yes, correct. And go ahead.
I was gonna say, and again, keep in mind that it's the number 12 that's consistent. Staff outside the police department receive 12 days off with compensation to recognize holidays. The police officers also receive 12 days off. They're just not set days throughout the calendar year.
And so I appreciate the questions, because I think that's why we want to start with this, because this is really the foundation of, if we're on the same page on this, I think what we're proposing makes a lot of sense. But if we don't agree on this, then it doesn't make a lot of sense.
You triggered it with the very first comments, and so that was the place to start.
Good,
Or
thank you.
at least from my perspective. Thank you.
So I think the next point of clarification is how we treat the old holiday bank that's already been earned versus how we plan to treat the new holiday bank going forward. So in this memo, we attempted to separate the two to give some understanding to that. So we can go into that discussion.
If we're going to proceed as it's outlined here, we would need to have two separate banks of holiday leave. The reason for that is that the proposal before you is to set a policy that after January 1, any holiday leave that is granted to an employee, a sworn non-exempt employee, will no longer be paid out when they leave. It's basically a use it or lose it type of leave. The leave that is on the books as of December 31st, because of the DOL rules, we cannot take that away from them. They have earned it, and we have to pay that out. Excuse me. So what we will have to do is keep a separate bank of hours so that we know what the old hours are. We're proposing that we require any leave, vacation, comp, or holiday, the holiday must be used first. We can't require that of sick leave, but we can require that of if they request vacation or comp time. And we use the holiday first. The proposal, I believe, is 147 hours that if they are over 147 at June 30th, we will pay the 147 out on June 30th. That will require some budget work. We will have some, I guess lap salaries would be what you call it, some, what do you refer to it as? Managed vacancies.
Yeah.
We have some managed vacancies so that we will have some extra funds in the police, excuse me, department budget and can pay for a good part of that. I don't know how much. The chief has reassured us that he will continue to work to get those hours down as low as possible. And then after June 30th, anything over 147, they would continue to have on hand, and we'd still have to pay it out, and we'd still have to pay the liability. And they would still be using the old first before they used any vacation or comp time. Is everybody with me?
Well, yeah, and so to use this methodology, what is it basically 12 months we will sort of have the old bank cleared out and everything will start with the new policy?
We don't know, because if we pay it all out at June 30th, you may still have some folks with some time on the books of the old. Now, they'll be using the old holiday first. I didn't clarify that. The old holiday would be used first. The new holiday would be sitting there for them, and if they don't use the old holiday before December 31st, they're going to lose everything they get
Right.
on January 1 of 2018.
19.
But they would lose it starting January 1st of 2019.
I'm sorry, no, I said what they earned. Everything that they earn on January 1st of 18,
Right.
they will lose on December 31st of 18. Anything they have not used by then.
Keep in mind, though, that we're not looking at a large percentage of the staff, the police officers that are in that position. There will be some, we don't know how many, but it's not like everybody is in that position where they're going to be in excess of 147 as of June 30th of 2018.
So I think today we have 13 or 14 police officers that are over 147. And so our commitment, my commitment to the town manager and to Pam, and our staff has discussed it on several occasions, is to get all of those officers under 147 before June 30th. So we will do our best to get them to take time off and to burn down those holiday leaves so they don't have anything going forward, because that will make life easier for, I think, everybody, particularly finance, if we get to a new software where we won't have to have 2 codes in that new software, assuming that kicks off July 1st, that we would just go forward with just one account of holiday leave, which is the new leave. You can call it HL18 for holiday leave that's earned 2018 or after. And then that, as she explained, becomes the use it or lose it. So they get 147 every year in January. If they use it by December 30th, they use it, and if they don't, it's gone. And we give them a new dump the following January 1st, and that continues on a recurring basis.
Well, I think you answered my question. There is a target date out there when the leave will be used up, and probably by, the year 2019, is it safe to say that by then, that fiscal year, the old method, the old system, most of those will be gone, and everybody will then be on the use it, lose it sort of thing, where you have to use it before December 31 of that year?
Based on the way that this is proposed, I would be surprised after December 31st of 2018, if folks are losing a lot of their holiday time,
Right.
that they don't go ahead and do something to find a way to take that
Sure,
time.
I would think so.
And the only way to take it is to use the old.
Right.
With those 14 that you have, will you accumulate that many, which would put you about at 30? Or will it be more or less compared to the 14 that you have now?
I'm sorry, could you say that again,
Okay,
sir?
yeah, you say you had about 14 now, right?
Yes, sir.
Well, at the end of the year, will you have accumulate 14 more, or will it be about 14, or will it be 30?
So it will be fewer than 14 officers, because the new holiday leave, if you accept this proposal that comes January 1st of 18, goes into a separate bank that's a use it or lose it bank. So we'll just have those 14 to get down. And again, our goal, I can't promise it because I can't see the future, but our goal is to get everyone that has a holiday bank now to 147 or less. And then therefore by June 30th of 18, again, if you accept this, we would do a payout because we're liable for those hours by DOL statutes and in our own practice. And then from that point forward, there's no liability associated with holiday leave. It's strictly use it or lose it, which I think takes us back to how this was originally intended to be used, which was to give those police officers the flexibility to be able to take those 12 paid days, but to do it within the year. I don't believe it was ever intended to be a rolling, running bank, but that practice just evolved that way.
Could you give us an example where somebody had 250 hours and tries, as you might, to alter schedules and get it worked down? They don't get the total with the new bank of 147 plus the old one. They're not down to 147 And I may be combining things, but they haven't been able to meet the goal by June 30th.
So two things. One is set aside the new leave, because that's a whole separate bank that has nothing to do with this old leave that we're responsible to pay out. That new bank is separate and is use it or lose it, and that's what you, assuming you adopt what we've recommended, that policy be in place before January 1st. Our officers are prepared for that. We've had those discussions with them to tell them that we're getting back to what was originally intended. So then we have a couple of officers now that are probably at 250-ish. That's probably the highest in that general neighborhood. It may be a little bit more. So again, our goal is to help them to schedule time to get that off. But if, for example, I have a sergeant who has a lot of hours and he's in a position that makes it difficult to take off because he's responsible for recruitment and hiring and retention. So we're sort of caught in that catch-22 of I need him to take time off, but I need him to be here because we got to find some police officers. So let's say he gets down to 200 instead of 147. So June 30th, he would be paid for 147 hours of holiday leave, which would leave a balance of 53 hours in his old holiday leave bank. Then, sure.
So he gets from 250 down to 200 by June 30th.
By June 30th.
Okay. We're not talking about the 147 that's accounted for in 2018.
Don't even worry about it.
Okay, so on June 30th, with 200 hours still unused, what happens?
We pay 147, which is what we're recommending as the cap that you would pay anyone off, a year's worth of holiday leave. And then that would leave him 53 hours still existing in the quote-unquote old holiday leave bank that he's still required to use. The only way he gets paid for that is if he leaves employment before he uses it, because we're liable to pay it out. But what we will do, as Pam suggested, is that will have to be the first bank that that officer uses if he takes any time off. And so even at 53 hours, you're talking, you know, a week plus, and we can make that happen pretty quickly in the fall.
So he uses up that, he gets down to 200. We pay him for the 147 out of that, still got 53 to go. So he's got 53 plus the 147
Yes, sir.
for 2018. And if he doesn't use all of that 53 or the 153 plus the 147, does he lose all of that?
He loses the
You lose all of the 147, but
The new time.
Any balance of the 53 will continue to roll. Because
It won't accrue anymore, but it'll still be in there to be used, or if he leaves employment before using it, he would be paid for it. But again, with only 53 hours going forward, and we'll require that be the first time used. So that's the incentive for the officers to use this time up, as I think Pam alluded to, is that the sooner you use the old, the sooner you can use the new and not lose it. And so we think this is a fair balancing point, because we don't think, well, I can tell you, we can't get everybody to zero in a reasonable period of time. And I think from the finance standpoint, I don't want to speak for Pam, but we've talked about it, and it would be much cleaner to be done by June 30th of this fiscal, or the current fiscal year, and then just be moving forward with a new system with one holiday leave bank that is not compensable to use it or lose it.
One thing I had mentioned, but I think the chief sees some logistical issues with that, is that we pay out everything at June 30th, no matter how many hours those are. But I think because it does create a problem, we're looking at the new time and attendance system, and I really do not want to start a new system with a leave category that's going to be going away in another couple of months, which one of my concerns there. The other concern is that the small amount of money that is over the 147, I think is going to be minimal. But I think in talking with the chief, they feel like there could be some disincentives there, and we just want to be mindful and give you, both of those options.
Tell us why that wouldn't work, Chief.
The challenge with that, sir, is that we have already basically required several employees to get down to 147. So I think that their argument could be, well, if you were going to pay anything out, you shouldn't have made me take my leave, and I could have gotten paid out for it. I don't know that that's a legitimate argument, but it's a perception issue, and it could cause issues just from a morale standpoint in terms of.
And I didn't get it, so slow it down a little
Okay.
bit. I really,
So-
I missed the.
I'm sorry,
missed the
I apologize.
objection. No, that's
So-
me, not you.
No. We already have required many of our employees to get under 147 or to 147 because we've been talking about this for about 9 or 10 months, knowing that this in some way, shape, or form was coming. So we've already required some to take leave that they might not have otherwise taken because we wanted to get it burned off. So now you have employees that might have been at 200 hours and we've required them to get to 147. So they're at 147 and they're going to get paid for 147. But then if they look at their partner in crime, who is maybe still at 200 hours, and if we pay those 200 hours, then the first officer is going to ask, well, why couldn't I have just gotten paid for those 53 hours? You paid my buddy for 200 hours, but you made me take time off. So it's not inappropriate. I think it's just more problematic from a management and a morale standpoint. And again, I'm confident that we can get people to 147 by June 30th. I can't promise that, which is why we have to talk about how do we deal with it, but absolutely our goal, and we've talked about it in several staff meetings, and I'll be putting out basically a mandate once we come back from the holidays that this is what needs to happen, schedule your people and get it done. So our goal is to get everybody under 147 again. We've only got, I think, 13 or 14 now to get to there, and some of them are 10 or 12 hours. That's not a big deal, but some are well over 200, and those are the ones we've really got to focus on to get them off.
As of June 30th, if they're at 160, and then the new number, we will pay them for 147 and roll the 13 over for the rest of the year
Until it's used.
until it's used, and by whatever reason that 13 is not used, they will still get paid for it because we're duty bound.
No, sir.
It'll
It'll just
keep rolling.
If they leave, yes, but otherwise it just stays in that bank until they use it, and they will know that they have to use that first. So essentially, the only way that doesn't get used is if they don't take time off. And they also will have to recognize that if they are not using that old, they can't use the new, and they're going to lose more of the new from that year. So I think there's a pretty good incentive to do that. But again, I'm optimistic that we will get everybody to 147 by June 30th.
Is there a way that you can start a clean new payroll system June the 1st and still make this work? But is there a way to merge both issues?
There's a way.
Because I'd like to start it off without carrying over old, or having to modify the program.
Right, and unless we pay all of it out, if we were to start a new system on July 1st and we don't pay all of the old out, assuming that there is someone left with more than 147, and we roll some of that over, the new system would have to accommodate that as well.
But that would be for only a fairly short period of time, right? Because the chief's already committed to clearing out this whole stuff, so it shouldn't be a problem for very long, I wouldn't think.
We believe a fairly small number of people by that point in time as well. We're not talking many people that would have to be under that system. We don't know the number, but we feel very confident that it would be relatively small, very small.
And I agree with that assessment. However, it still means that we are modifying the system that we will be purchasing that will have the bells and whistles that we need, but we have to modify it for a very few number of people for a very short period of time. And that was my concern. But, you know, we can certainly do that. But it's just, that's my concern.
I could track.
kind of
They
incentive?
put it into the system.
I think you're asking, BD, what I was going to suggest. If you get the new system, you don't want to, shall I say, contaminate the new system. Is there a way to keep up with this, either manually or some other way, so that just long enough to go ahead and clear these persons and these hours out, and then you got your new system, it starts, and you don't use it for the for these other hours. Wouldn't that work?
It will. You know, it's just always when you're starting a new computer system, you want to start clean and have it working like you want it to go forward.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, I'll
we'll make whatever you guys decide.
Yeah.
We'll make it work, but I'm bringing to you the concerns that I had.
I'll make that commitment to work with Patty if we need to on a small, wouldn't have to put that in the system. Work through that manually to get it out of the new system.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like a workable situation. The ideal would be, as I understand it, Pam, that you start with a clean slate, you don't have to worry about the old one, but if I'm hearing the HR director there, he's willing to work with you so that the whole burden maybe is not on you and your staff, but and then, I mean, is it reasonable to conclude that the old system will clear out within 6 months or 12 months at the greatest? Is that a fair
I
assessment?
would be very
Yeah, that's
surprised
the-
if it took more than 6 months.
Yeah, that's the plan, is that shortly after, 2019, that it should be gone. Should, hopefully won't have much rollover after January 1st, 2019, but
Right.
if there is some, we will have to track it until it's fully depleted to zero for everyone. So it will be some extra work for whoever has to track that, but we can do it, but it will be an extra effort, so. But I think with us working together, if you choose to go this route, we'll make it work however you tell us to do it, so.
That proposal, excuse me, go ahead, Kathy.
Just to clarify something for me, because I've either missed it or I need an answer to the question. So if July 1st of 2018, somebody had 200 hours, the 147 is taken care of, and they still have, how many hours?
53.
53 hours. Can we not just pay them for that 53 and wipe the slate clean and go forward?
We can, but the concern is that since June of this year, the chief and his staff have been asking the officers to be taking time off, and many of them have followed through on that request. And so if someone has followed through on that, they've taken time off, somebody else that hasn't, one person's gotten compensation for that by taking time off. Another person that didn't follow through on that request is going to be paid a cash payout, and there may be some animosity with regards to why someone had to take the time off versus why someone got a cash payout.
And we're just trying to keep a level playing field. I mean, if we're gonna pay out, we could just as well pay out now and start fresh versus waiting, but it's just a matter of, whether you want to be paying out or give them time to take it off.
I understand what you're saying. On the other hand, my view is they were responsible to take it anyway. And so to feel animosity because one guy got it one way and one got it another, that's back on them.
I don't disagree, but we also had set June 30th of 18 as the date to do that. So the understanding is that we will require, and I would change one word respectfully that BD mentioned, which it wasn't a request in every case. In some cases, it was an order to go home, to use that time up, because that's how you need to do it with some of these guys, because they just like to work, which is a great problem to have, because they're young and excited and want to do a good job and do a good job, but we have sent some home requiring them to take leave. So, that's our intention to do with these others up to June 30th. And the only way that wouldn't happen is if they're just in a situation where staffing can't make it happen, but I'm confident that we can make it happen by June 30th, that we can get everybody under 147.
I suggest we move with that, and if come June 30th, if there's still an issue, we bring it back and in essence, deal with whatever we feel is best based on your recommendation then. But I have a lot of confidence that what you've said is going to happen, and that come June 30th of 2018, most of this issue will be clarified and will be gone. So I would suggest, Mr. Mayor, maybe we're not through discussing it, but you know, we started this discussion way back in June. It's 6 months out from that. 18 is almost here. It seems to me like we've had enough time to work through this. We've had a lot of meetings. I know Law and Finance met, and then the council wanted to hear what we had heard, and so we're here tonight with a recommendation to get this done starting 2018, which is what, 3 weeks away or less than that, I guess. So I think the recommendation that they made here is reasonable. It changes the policy. You see the red lettering there. I don't have a problem of moving that we accept the recommendation and approve it and move on.
Well, the council's got to vote on it, but I want to make sure they understand the whole thing. You clear on it?
I have enough confidence in those three people standing right out there and the explanation they've given. When it comes to leave, I've had some experience in that with another government entity, and it can be a little confusing at times. But yeah, I don't have any problem with the explanation given. I think part of the issue is with police officers, their hours of work are different in terms of the number of days that they work. What is it, 12.25, I believe it is. And so, you know, and of course I used to deal with employees who had stored up time. They always had a max. They couldn't go beyond that or they would lose it. So we're implementing that. And I think the bottom line is what I think Mr. Sickler said to begin with. Nobody's getting across to anybody. All town employees get 12 holidays a year. And either if they have to work on that day, they get paid for it. If they don't, they get those days. So, you know, we're looking for an equitable, if that's the right term, circumstance. And so I'm confident we have that.
Let me ask a question. Now, based off this new policy and based off what's happened in the last year, employees are being asked to use up the holiday bank time and not vacation time. Holiday bank time first. So if they use that up and don't need to use their vacation time, and they're maxed out at vacation time and sick time, those hours go into sick time, correct?
They
So
get the cap on the vacation of 288, and any new accrued vacation hours rolled into sick time.
So it's, you know, one distinct advantage that police officers have is they use those holiday banks for their vacation days. They can take their vacation days if they're maxed out and put it to their sick leave, which can help them to retire earlier. And this is just, I mean, this is no secret, right?
Right.
Okay.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, so that's an advantage other employees don't have, do they? Nobody else can bank up hours and not use vacation days, correct?
We can,
Other staff,
yeah, if we have enough.
non-police officers can max out their vacation.
They don't have an alternative to use another set of
We don't have an
hours.
alternative bank that
That's
would
right.
allow us not to use vacation.
Right.
But the
Except for
police officers
comp
won't,
time.
once we work
Yeah.
through converting into the new holiday leave system, then the police officers, the non-exempt sworn police officers won't have that option,
Sure they will. You're gonna have 12 days.
but they have to use them.
That's right, but I'm saying if you use those first and don't use your vacation, you can still accrue a lot of vacation time. That's what I'm saying. They have a distinct advantage of accruing 12 days of vacation time easier than other employees.
I think from what you're making, they have options that others don't have.
Right.
They have
It's just an
they have
option.
The flexibility, they still have to use the 12 days within the calendar year.
I
if
agree.
They lose them.
I understand that, but they also can still bank vacation time easier than other employees.
Correct. They have more flexibility, but other employees they'll have those 12 holidays in which they won't have to take any vacation either, but they don't have the flexibility of which days
Right.
they are.
Right, I'm just saying it can't help you accumulate in sick leave and possibly retire early. That's my whole point.
Well, but
is-
a non-police officer can do the same with regards to maxing out their vacation and having that accrued vacation then drop into sick time.
Well, any employee with a lot of years can do that, I understand that, but still, they have a flexibility of using 12 days that they may not have to use and can accrue in sick time. We can go around in circles and circles on this. The point, this is a yes or no question. Yes is the answer. I mean, that's it. Yes is the answer. That's not what I'm trying to get to. It's just there is a different advantage. We talk about equity and so forth with other employees. They have an advantage based on the schedule that they work and based on the policy that could be beneficial in the long run. Could be, I said.
And I guess I would just, I don't disagree, but I would say that they have, the police officers have the flexibility to choose those days, but they're still receiving only 12 days, which is the same as another staff member.
Correct.
And
Correct. But you can take them, you could take more than one day at the time. You could take 2 days lumped together if approved by the chief, correct?
They could.
Okay.
But they also have to work a schedule that requires them to work on Saturdays and Sundays and evenings.
I understand that.
And
I
other staff members.
understand that. I understand that. And looking at the information we had at our last meeting, that staff provided us and what other towns do, you know, a distinct, what, 20% did a bank holiday. Most of them have gone away from that. Most of them have gone to pay-as-you-go. For, I think, a very good reason by looking at this policy, which is as confusing as all get out. Y'all established it, so it's easy to y'all. It's not easy to, I think, the person walking in off the street to see it. And I think that's where we need to go. I think we should do pay-as-you-go. You can not only, if I'm reading the policy right here, reading what's down here at the bottom about holiday pay, police officer, someone who works will get their regular hourly rate plus holiday pay rate, which means they will get double time. Is that correct, Ms. Warden? Would that not be correct?
Yes.
Yes, you can. You can get paid double time.
If they get paid for the holiday and they get paid for the day they work as the holiday.
You can get double time.
If there was a pay-as-you-go system, then we would
Yes,
not
pay as
have
you go,
floating.
that would be an issue.
Right.
But under the system we've proposed, that's not an issue. They don't ever see any cash for holidays.
What I'm saying is let's eliminate with the bank holiday system and go pay as you go. They earn it, they get paid for it, you move on. You earn it, you get paid for it, you move on. You earn it, you get paid for it, you move on. You double time. Therefore, they're getting paid for those 12 holidays. The day they work and then the 12 holidays, they're getting paid double time, which is...
I don't follow you there, Mr. Singleton. I don't see that. Every employee gets 12 holidays a year they're paid, okay? Police department just has the flexibility. I think that's the key term. I don't see an advantage here.
You're getting paid for the day, actual paid in your paycheck, not taking the day as a holiday.
But if a regular employee has to work on a holiday, they would get paid as a regular work day, and they'd also get the holiday.
If they have to work on that day, that's correct. I'm saying
Yeah.
the town tries to avoid that with other employees. In police, you cannot do that because they're
Right.
working 24/7. We understand that. I'm saying is you make it quick. Other towns do this. This is not. I'm not inventing the wheel here.
Wow.
This is how a lot of other towns do it. It was on that schedule we had that was shown to us. That's how other towns pay. It keeps it simple. You don't worry about this. We got EHL, we got HL, we got all kinds of holiday banks here. It's a very confusing system. Pay them, and they can get paid double time, which should be some incentive for some people. They may want to work instead of taking the time. The people who don't use their time working the holidays and get paid double time would be a huge advantage. Because you're having an arm twist, some of them to take the days off. It's a huge,
Well,
it could be a huge advantage for many people. And that's, again, if you look at the schedule, y'all looked at this 6 months ago,
Yeah.
that's what most towns are doing for a very good reason. It's simple. You earn it as you pay as you go. Like other employees would do if they worked a holiday, they would get paid the next pay period.
I'd have to look back at that schedule. I'm not sure.
Go check it out.
I would argue, Mr. Singleton, though, that giving our police officers the flexibility that they've had is a competitive advantage to the town of Garner.
Well,
Regardless
that
of what
sounds good.
Another town does.
But in the last 3 years, you talked about the number of officers that have left. Some have retired, but we lost 23 officers or 24 officers, right? So obviously the holiday banking is not the incentive to keep them here because it's already in place. There's obviously some other benefit or pay, salary grade or whatever that's causing people leaving other different reasons also. But I'm saying that's not the one thing they're hanging on to stay here because people have come and gone. So that's not the one benefit that is making the make or break on one of Garner because they have the holiday bank.
Well, I think we've got, in terms of the holiday bank, I think we've got a system that works well, and we're now working to try and identify those other concerns and issues that are causing our officers to choose to leave or not come to the town. I don't think that this one is broken. I think there's others that we need to look at to try and strengthen to continue to retain our current officers and attract new officers. And my argument would be, and I don't want to speak for the chief, but my argument would be with regards to having the current holiday bank system with the flexibility for our police officers, it works as an advantage to our town, to our police officers.
Well, again, I go back to the chart where several towns recently switched and went away from that. They must have done it for a reason. I just, it's a confusing policy. As again, if someone walked off the street and read this, would be very confused. Heck, I'm confused. I've been reading it for the last few weeks we've been talking about it.
Yeah.
And in most other work circumstances, you get paid when you work. You pay as you go. That's what we'd be doing with other employees. You wouldn't give other employees the flexibility of banking a holiday bank based off our policy.
But the other employees work a Monday through Friday standard shift. The police officers are not doing that.
I understand that, but I'm sitting here reading on page 53, or page 54 or 53 of this, section 4, holidays compensation when work is required, and it says they on regular scheduled holidays shall be paid at their hourly rate actually worked in addition to any holiday pay for which they are entitled in accordance with FLSA. But I'm saying the other employees don't get the option of having a holiday bank, they're going to be paid.
But that's the exception. We don't have many non-police officer staff members that have.
I understand that. I understand that's done for budgetary reasons. I understand that on purpose. I know police and fire and rescue people have to do this. It's the part of the job. I understand that. When we had a utility here and had water and sewer service, we had people who got paid like that because they had to be. There were emergencies where they were called out. So,
And I mean, I think, you know, we've talked about this a lot ongoing here and there. We have, you know, staff might have different views on how it should be handled. Council has different views on how it should be handled. I mean, we're going to do it however, you know, the majority of the council tells us to do it. We could probably go, you know, back and forth on all the different points. Some towns, a lot of towns don't do it, and just recently had somebody say a lot of towns were getting away from this. We were just trying to preserve something that we've been doing for a while. We don't know how it started, but we were trying to preserve it because the employees saw it as a benefit, and we were trying to reach a balance and make it where it was manageable. But I think at this point, you know, we're going to do whatever you instruct us to do, and I don't know how much more we can just talk about it and go point, counterpoint, and, you know, we're just going to follow your lead, you know.
well, I think as BD noted, and he noted at our retreat, there are other benefits, whether it be salary or reinstituting longevity or reviewing the health, what's done with health insurance, that are much more beneficial to an employee than what this would be. Again, I see a distinct
This is
advantage.
probably not the top of the list, but.
Yeah, I would think someone, especially some of these, as the chief mentioned, some of the guys who like to work a lot, get paid double time and not have to worry about taking, and they don't even want to take the days, that's a distinct advantage to them. Especially if they took the monies just off those days and invested it. Yeah, but anyway, I just, it's a confusing policy. I think we should go pay as you go.
We will have to increase our salary line items, but did you?
I understand. We're going to increase for other benefits, so this is just another one of those benefits.
Right, I'm just.
I view it as a benefit.
Yeah, just throwing it up.
But oh yes, I understand that. But if we pay out 147 hours to employees, we're going to be, you know, by the end of next June, we're going to have to do that anyway. So that's, I mean, that's a budgetary part of the budgetary process that have to be addressed. I understand that.
That would have been a one-time payoff, but ongoing, we're going to.
I understand that, but I think it's a much more substantial benefit to an employee than what we have proposed. That's my opinion. If we vote on it, it's 4-1, that's the way it rolls. I'm just saying, I think it's clean, it's simple, it's cut and dry. This is how you do it.
So, a couple things if I may, and respectfully, I disagree in regards to the employees seeing as a better benefit. We asked the employees in a survey how they felt about changing the program, and almost unanimously they appreciate the use of the holiday leave as time off. So respectfully, I understand exactly what you're saying, that it's money in their pocket, but many of them aren't interested in the money in the pocket as much as they are the time off. So the other thing I would say, two more things. One, to what Mr. Dickerson alluded to, is that I think you're looking at a minimum of $300,000 a year to pay this holiday leave. And respectfully, that's 2 or 3 new police officers that we could put on the street, or another person in finance, or a person in HR, or a person in public works, trying to respectfully fix something that's not necessarily broken. The system we have works and gives a benefit to employees. I don't disagree that other towns have gone away from it, but I would encourage you to not go away from a benefit we have. I don't disagree that it's not a reason necessarily for someone to stay, but taking that benefit away could be pushing a few of the folks that are not sure if they're staying or going to go. And I'm concerned about that because we're having difficulty with recruitment and hiring, and we have a number of folks that are in that early 3 to 4 year window that are concerned about health insurance and things like that. So there some of them are already teetering towards, I've got to go somewhere before I hit 5 years, because most places require 25 years of service to get full health care at retirement, many of them in Wake County. So if we take this benefit away, that could push them more towards the tipping point of I'm going to go somewhere else. And we can't afford to lose any more police officers than we already have or already might through retirements and other things. So I would encourage you to consider maintaining this benefit. There's actually a significant cost savings to doing it as a bank and not as a payout. And then to then do the study that I think you've indicated that you would be interested in doing as far as a full compensation study and see what then things look like. But I would strongly encourage us to not give a benefit away that we have right now, where we're perhaps ahead of some, if not most, agencies in the county, because we don't have some of the benefits that other agencies do. Thank you.
Well, that's fine and dandy, but I don't remember someone coming to us and telling us we shouldn't have taken longevity away years ago. We shouldn't have. Now we realize hindsight's 20/20, we shouldn't have. And that was taking a benefit away that would have been much more substantial, I think, to the employees. And I think we need to correct that mistake. And as you addressed about the employees getting full-time benefits, 25 years, we made some changes there that we had to address, and we have to go back and retroactive those employees. I mean, that's the way I think you're going to have to address, may have to address the system, whatever BD brings to us to discuss. Those decisions years ago have helped put us in this position.
I don't disagree, and I think that goes to the argument that if we can find a way to not spend $300,000 on holiday leave, you could spend $300,000 more wisely on some of these other issues that BD's identified and that you've indicated a willingness to address. Because I think if you look at what you do, if you spend some of that money on reinstituting longevity, you will get a very, very positive response. Whereas if you take away the ability to use this holiday leave respectfully, you will not get a positive response.
Well, I didn't expect the police to say that if you did a poll that they weren't going to like it. I mean, that's just like, you know, there was an article I talked to Ms. Behringer yesterday about, in the paper recently, about no one gives Christmas bonuses anymore. In the town, the Garner still does give a small Christmas bonus. So that's going away to other things, other benefits is tied into increasing longevity or some other type of benefit. And how we're in the minority of doing that. And I'm sure if you ask some of the employees, they say they wouldn't want you to give it away. But if you gave it to them in another benefit, they may appreciate it. We don't know that. But I'm sure if you ask them in the survey, they say, no, we'd like to have it. So you'd say, well, we're going to institute it in longevity, and that'll pay you more in the long run. But anyway.
Let me ask a question. Great. Elementary for me, explain pay as you go.
I'll let Ms. Wortham explain pay as you go.
Okay.
She's in payroll.
For pay-as-you-go, when the first pay period, that includes January 1st, we would pay the equivalent, in addition to their regular work schedule, and what generally it's 85.5 hours for most of the sworn non-exempt law enforcement officers. They would get 85.5 hours of regular work time. In addition, they would get their schedule of the holiday, the 12.25 hours, in additional compensation. The following pay period, if it includes the MLK holiday, they would again get that extra 12.25 or 8.5, depending on which category they're in. That would be added to their compensation and their paycheck. Each holiday.
8.5 is what? It's who?
Detectives.
Detectives or school resource, let's see.
School resource officers, detectives work that schedule, and then some of our admin staffs, a couple of the sergeants, our P&T sergeant, a couple of folks like that. And then you have traffic officers that are currently working either a 10-hour or a 12-hour schedule to provide adequate coverage. And then everyone that's basically a first responder in patrol is working 12.25-hour shifts.
So, go ahead and finish, Pam. I'll come back to the question. The numbers, I'll ask about those numbers.
So each pay period that there is a holiday, the officer would get their regular schedule and their pay, and in addition, they would get their holiday pay paid out in that same paycheck.
Okay, so you said the patrol officers are mainly 85 and a half hours per 2 week.
For
is that
2-week
right?
period. Yes, sir.
So the people work 8 and a half hours, 10 days, so is that 85 and a half hours too?
Yes.
So all of them are working the same amount of hours, all of them are being paid for the same amount of hours, it's just they're working different times.
Different schedules.
Different schedules.
Because they've got to work, and that's, I don't think we specifically touched on this, but under FLSA, under the 207K exemption, the police officers are required to work 171 hours every 28-day cycle, or 2,223 hours a year, as opposed to most other employees that work 2,080.
So that includes the detectives and school resource officers, so it includes all sworn officers? Is that
All
what you're saying?
non-exempt sworn officers work 2223.
All of them, okay, just different ways of getting
schedules,
there.
but they all get there.
Okay.
I think, Mr. Kennedy, another way of explaining the pay-as-you-go is exactly what we do with all the other staff members that are not non-exempt sworn police officers. A holiday occurs, they get paid for the holiday in the next paycheck for that pay cycle. That would be another way of explaining the pay.
Anything else to add on that? Because I want to hear what Jackie, Kathy, and Ken think
Before we
of.
started earlier, I cut off. Ken, we know where you stand.
Well, there's some more I'd like to say about this, and I'll
Kathy,
take my time.
what's your position?
Well, a couple of questions. One, we talked about them, the officers perceiving pay-as-you-go as a loss. I have some questions about that, since a lot of them don't take the leave time anyway. Then how would they perceive pay-as-you-go as a loss when they are being given compensation money for time that they weren't taking anyway?
Well, the majority do take the time. Again, we're only talking about right now 14 employees that are over 147. So the majority do take the time, and again, the key is the flexibility that they lose in being able to take off those days that they choose, as opposed to a scheduled holiday because of their rotating schedule, days and nights and weekends and holidays and things like that. So they would see it that way because they would lose the flexibility they have under the current system. Not arguing they're not still getting a benefit, but it would be a different benefit that they would perceive as loss of flexibility.
But you've had to make some of them take that time off. They normally would not have done that. They would just keep letting it roll over. Had you not been working to get those hours down, which again brings into question to me whether or not they would perceive it as a loss if they got paid as they went. That's one part. Pam, a question for you, because the chief said that if we paid as you go, that would cost over $300,000.
And I've not run the numbers, so I couldn't give you that exact number, but I'd be happy to run the numbers for you.
Is it in the ballpark? Is it still a?
I really don't know, because we have very low starting salaries, but we have much higher, as people have been on board for a while. Because I think one of the surveys we did was, no, I'm sorry, I looked up in the North Carolina League of Municipalities, they have a salary survey, and our police officers average about $50,000 a year, I believe. But our starting salary for officers is about half, about 40. So, I mean, off the top of my head, I cannot give you that number.
So would it cost, if we paid out, paid as you go, well, I'm sorry, I'm confusing terms, but if we paid that $300,000, is that a great loss to us compared to, I'm not sure what I'm comparing it to, honestly.
When $300,000 compared to a $30 million budget, it's about 1% of our budget.
But you heard the police say, $300,000 you can use in a lot of different ways, including hiring needed.
It's a very rough estimate.
Yeah.
Based on just doing some quick math of 147 times the number of people that they're on holiday leave towards an average pay rate of, I think, so 25 is probably ballparkish an average. So it may be high, but it's going to be, I would say, probably at least 250, and it could be more depending on who you've got working at any given time and what their pay rates are.
I'll defer to Mr. Johnson. He won't say anything because I've got 2 or 3 things I want to say, and then, but if he doesn't, I'll be happy to go ahead and speak.
Well, I got kind of lost on a lot of things because I have not been in on the discussion of what's been going on. I've been away, but I'm quite sure that the board have taken care of this in a very nice and timely way. Chief, so you calculating that.
Yes, sir.
With your survey of the officers, was there any long discussion on the payout compared to the system that we're carrying or talking about now?
We have not had a lot of discussion in depth with them because we wanted to have more discussion with you first, because I don't want to lead them down a path that's not going to happen or is going to happen. So the survey was fairly straightforward, and I think we asked 3 questions in it, and it revolved around, what would your preference be of using holiday leave versus getting pay-as-you-go or some other program, and it was an overwhelming response to favoring the ability to have the flexibility of a holiday leave bank.
Maintaining the current program.
So with the system of payout, it's going to cost us estimated
$250,000
if we go that route. So the safest way is to go the route that y'all are presenting to us tonight, to, if there be any variation to change any of it.
Ultimately, that's your decision. I wouldn't suggest to tell you what to do, but I would suggest that I think it is a good proposal because it doesn't add any cost to the town budget in terms of personnel, and it maintains the flexibility that the officers currently have.
Now, I think after we get through this 1 year of trying to burn one year and a quarter, whatever it is, to burn this old holiday bank, I mean, it should be seamless, and we would not have to budget the extra $250,000, $300,000, but is one way to look at it. But
With the other towns that you have surveyed around in area with the population of our size, what kind of level did you have with them?
I don't have a copy of that with me tonight, but we handed it out to the other council members. I apologize you were not here. We surveyed every town in Wake County except for Raleigh and Cary because of their size. They are not comparable, and I didn't feel like it was fair either way, whichever way they did it. We also included Clayton, Ashboro, and Burlington because they were comparable size to us. If I remember correctly, there was one town that uses a bank of 88 hours, and it's a use it or lose it. And there are 2 or 3 that were using a bank and made the decision over the last 2 or 3 years to go away from that and go to a pay-as-you-go.
and that's accurate.
Pardon me?
I was saying that's accurate. I have the
Okay.
chart in front of me, so yes.
But size-wise, we tried to do as much comparable, we wanted to compare apples to apples and make sure that we weren't comparing a really large system or a really small system, because those have unique circumstances as well. Does that answer your question?
That's all I have.
Right.
Are you coming back this way, Mr. Mayor? Okay.
Let
Go
Ken
ahead,
go ahead.
Mr. Marshman, let Mr. Marshman go ahead.
I thought you had said I could speak after him. There are 3 things I want to say that in my mind are interrelated and relate to this, to the rest of you that may not be. Last week, I believe it was, I attended a police-sponsored community discussion, and the chief and several of his officers were there, did a very effective job in presenting information to the people there. I believe Ms. Behringer was there. Well, you were there, Mr. Mayor. One of the things that he said early on was, that his department, as it looks at the both the police department and the community, is they're sensitive in their hiring practices to try to become more diverse, more like the community itself, and that's a struggle in terms of recruitment for some in some of the minority areas there. And so I admire his basically admitting that and saying that that's an area he's working on, and I think. Any number of people in the community certainly wanted to hire good qualified officers, but there is a recognition that the community is more diverse. And so I was impressed with the way that both he and his staff handled that issue, and that's something that this council, I think, should be appreciative of in terms of his willingness to have these community conversations. Probably not all police departments do that. So that goes to the issue of recruitment. The second point I would make, that maybe you got to stretch to make it work here, but while I was in downtown Raleigh yesterday, I took the privilege of stopping by a couple of the Wake County government offices and visiting a couple of ex-town employees. That, as far as we were concerned, were very effective employees here, but for whatever reason, I assume some of it had to do with better pay or better circumstances, they left us. I say I visited 3. I missed Mike Gammon. He was not in at the time, but so again, goes to the issue of recruitment. We're in an area, in a town, and a county where those are important things. And so when I hear the police chief say that the banking of these hours and the way we're doing it now is a better way to go, that's a big influence for me. The third thing I would say, and maybe this is just an emotional thing, but when we talk about the police department, so far as I know, these are the only guys and ladies who strap on a weapon every day and go out there and deal with circumstances that the average employee does not deal with. They're the ones that their wives hope they come home at the end of the day, their wives or spouses, I should say. And so, you know, if you sense that I'm a little more sensitive and empathetic, and I'm not suggesting other council members aren't, but you know, they are a unique category. And so I have a high regard and high respect for them. I think the current police chief who's come here to our town and set a high standard, he's known not only here locally, but he's known statewide and nationally. I think we're to do all we can to support what he's doing. And again, I'm not accusing other council members not doing that, but it's just an area that I think, you know, we've spent so much time on a leave policy that's a little bit difficult to understand. But like I said, if we've got 3 department heads that come in here and say this is what we recommend, the town manager's done that, I think we're spinning our wheels to keep spending time saying we don't understand it and we're not sure we should approve it. I think we should approve the recommendation and move on. Thank you.
Well, I take offense to what Mr. Marston said because he's implying that I'm not sensitive to the officers. So I don't really like that. I'll tell you that pretty bluntly.
Well, we can talk about that later, Mr. Singer.
Okay, that's fine. I don't appreciate you accusing me of not being sensitive to the officers.
I
What
said
helps
the
to recruit
council-
officers, you said what you said. I had the floor.
Okay.
Hiring minorities to work in police, sure, we all support that. This is not a Garner problem or a Wake County problem or a North Carolina problem. It's a nationwide problem. And here in Wake County with 12 municipalities, plus the ones surrounding us, it's tough and challenging. We look at the issues that Raleigh had with their pay study for police and fire. We talked about this at the retreat, how the cycle keeps going, how Garner's now in the bottom third, I think, pay because the police is getting ready to come up on the new pay study and we'll catch back up because every town's on a different pay study and they look and say compares and they adjust salaries for fire and rescue. And so it's an ongoing process that's not going to end because you have to be competitive. I think what do you say our starting salary now on police is?
38 something, sorry.
But in the countywide, that's probably in the bottom half right now.
It's 11th out of probably 12 or 13.
Okay. In Raleigh, because Raleigh leapfrogged, I think the first.
42.
Yeah. So that's when we'll have to address that. I mean, that's going to have to be addressed. And we're going to all have to address it because that's what you have to pay to get qualified applicants. Just like going back and reviewing the benefits, the longevity issue and health care, how that's handled, and whatever else BD brings to us. So we all have to address that for all employees. I mean, it's not just the police where the local towns are taking employees from one town and going to another town or working in the county. It's happening left and right. But with police, it's the applicant pool is, I don't know if shrinking is the right word, but because of some nationwide issues, some people are hesitant to maybe apply to be a police officer. Some people talk bad about police officers when they shouldn't. I said before and I say again, we've answered 30-some-odd thousand calls a year here, roughly, right? 32, 33?
On pace for 42,000 this year.
42,000. And of those 42,000 calls, that's a minimum of 42,000 interactions. The complaints that the town gets is a fraction of 1%. It's very small, and that's mainly nationwide also. You have some bad incidences that were caught, that people did bad things, bad judgment by some police officers. But gosh, there's bad politicians, there's bad administrators, there's bad finance directors, there's bad HR directors. I mean, the percentages are probably no greater. So police, as unfairly nationwide, some of it by the media, you know, made it seem like all police officers are bad when in fact they're not. So I don't, you know, I'm not looking at taking benefits away. I'm trying to do things to make it better. That's why we talked at the retreat on BD's presentation about how to address this for all employees, looking at our compensation packages to make things more attractive, and we're going to have to. I mean, let's be honest. When the police come to the budget, to the town council, how many times do we go up there to the chief and take big red markers and say, no, 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 no? Most of the time we go, we agree, we agree, we agree. Right? You agree?
Speaking, yes.
Most of the time, we agree. And, you know, we've listened to the body cameras that are going to start sometime. Full.
They're out.
Out,
And it'll be
all.
full out in spring.
Well, out in the spring. And so we listen to that, and we've addressed that, and we'll continue to address that. And we want them to be safe, because you're right, Mr. Marshall, when they grab that, they're the only ones that strap a gun on and go out every day. And you don't know what may happen when some crazy person decides to do something crazy. And when they approach a car, they don't know what they're going to encounter. Or they approach a robbery or whatever. So we all want to make the benefits attractive for police officers and all employees. And it's just a shame that fewer and fewer people are looking at being officers nowadays. I asked the chief last week for some stickers, some police sticker badges, because I had a friend who had a nephew who was having a police-themed birthday party. I think he was 6. And they were a big hit because he wants to be a police officer. Now, he's 6 now. That may change. It may not. I don't know. But that's what all of them are dressed as, are police officers. So that's a good start. That maybe it's a wave. Maybe people will have more respect for the position, because again, it's a position to respect. So I'm not looking at trying to hurt benefits. I'm trying to help make the total compensation package the best. And I'm assuming we're going to address these issues from BD here sometime in the next couple of months. I don't know when you're going to bring a presentation back to us, because we're going to apply that to the upcoming budget. Because Mr. Dixon told us about health care. He's already mentioned health care costs are going to go up.
Yeah, we're probably going to bring a couple of
some number
things to you pretty soon, and then we might have another group that we'll bring a little later, but yes.
That's good. So I just have a different opinion on this policy than others.
Okay, but let's hear from
Regarding this $300,000 figure, I might try to put something in perspective. Let's assume that there are 50 officers that come into this category. And in order to be making $20 an hour, the average salary would have to be something close to 44 grand, divided by the number of hours you're required to work. So I just took $50 times $20 an hour times 2 for double time, times 147 hours. That came out to be $294,000. That's assuming that nobody's schedule fell on a holiday, everybody's schedule fell on a holiday, and you had to work it and you got paid double time. So you could take that number and cut it in half. Still, $150,000 is a lot. It sounds like a lot. I wouldn't necessarily want to have to be saddled with that additional responsibility, but put it in perspective, it seems like it might be about 0.5% of a $33 million budget. But that's the first part. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, the only thing I would suggest, and I don't know we've specifically gotten into this, but I think you would still pay the police officer, whether they worked or not, to give them 12 days of holiday pay, similar to the 12 days off that other employees get. Because if you're only going to reward the police officers that happen to be working the holiday, I think respectfully that's a fairness issue. If their schedule is such that they don't happen to work when the holiday occurs and they don't get paid, then they're not getting a similar compensation to other town employees. We're not asking for more, but I think we should treat them fairly if you were to go that way.
Every staff member, whether they're a police officer, whether they work in finance, HR, public works, any department, should receive compensation for 12 holidays per year. in the police department, the likelihood is high that at least half of those sworn police officers are gonna have to work on any given holiday. That individual, if you did a pay-as-you-go, would receive pay for the holiday on that day and compensation for all the hours that they worked on that holiday as well. A police officer who wasn't scheduled to work on the holiday would receive pay for the holiday, but no additional compensation for time worked. That would be no different than any other town employee.
Well, hey, I won't try to wrap my mind around it just now. I'm trying to get resolution. I came in here tonight, I didn't think there's any way in the world we would approve anything tonight, because I didn't think we'd get to a basic understanding of where the differences were. And even if we did, I don't feel, I didn't feel like, hey, this is a bunch of stuff, all of us, we've had all of this for weeks to get to a point where I understand it and then can seal the deal with a whole lot of things on the last meeting of the year. I just didn't see how it was going to get done. But having said that, we've got a policy, no, we got a practice that was inconsistent with a policy. We're going to change the policy to more reflect the practice. To me, that's a giant step to do, is to change a policy to reflect the practice that if we had known we had been doing it, we wouldn't have done it. So that's a pretty significant step. But it's a practice that maybe we're in the minority of municipalities that are doing it. When all is said and done, how we handle 147 hours in a given year, it doesn't amount to, it amounts, it's a significant amount to an individual and their family and how it is managed throughout the year. But looking at it on a broader, maybe try to look at it maybe at a different level, it is, and we were looking at an overall budget or an over all employees, that's tends to be a little bit minor compared to a lot of other issues that seem to float on, have a high priority. Bottom line of what it tells me is, I'm not necessarily going to stand on or try to make a grandstand on a principle and say we're going to stay with the same policy we had and we're going to change practice to policy. I can switch. I can go from changing the policy to what the practice is. But if I do, there's some other steps that I finally got the understanding when I got that basic gap between about my perception of double dipping. When I got rid of that, and I have to keep reminding myself, I truly do just have to stop and think about it again. When I got rid of that, got on to the next step, is that we got these banks out there and we've got this liability against us, and there's a great effort to move that down. I would suspect if most of the people wanted to have taken the leave, they wouldn't be running at 250 hours right now. 250 hours, it's easy to say 250, it almost becomes days, but 250 hours by 12.25 whatever, it's 20 days. So over a career, they got 20 days more accumulated. That's not a big issue, but it is a liability. So it's a big deal to say, draw it down, and by the end of this year, we're going to have this problem solved. So to me, that's a giant step to get rid of this problem that we got hanging over our head, the liability. And that's larger than, well, it's at least equal, it's quid pro quo of getting practice now changed into policy. The one thing I would suggest, though, is I can go that route, but what's been suggested about the policy here, once we get it cleaned up, but my one proviso is that in order for me to approve this what was in the package, we need to have a way that the
Software.
the payroll software not be encumbered with any hangers on. It be handled somehow separately, legitimately, legally, morally, ethically, all those things, but don't burden that computer system with that problem.
And Mr. Kennedy, I will take on working with the chief and his command staff and Pam and Patty. I will take on that responsibility for those that are still left with the liability hours as of June 30th to work those down manually and get those off the books.
I've looked at it at trying to, sometimes I chastise myself or think that way, that I'm trying to bring police back in line with non-police personnel. And yes, they don't have the flexibility to choose, they don't have the flexibility to automatically get the days off. They have the flexibility to choose other days. And so they have some flexibility in one place and no flexibility in another. But to some extent, this whole banking thing is the balancing act. Most of the time, most of the time I go for the simplest, most straightforward thing that is, or at least I think I would, that makes most sense, and you can calculate it and move on and not burden ourselves. From the beginning, I always favored pay as you go. I can support, after all of this stuff and get an understanding, I can support it with what you proposed, but it can be clean and neat. Can you support that, Pam?
Sir, I will support whatever you choose.
No.
Gut feeling.
I am concerned about the going forward, and I understand Mr. Seckler's commitment to helping, but we still will have assuming we can get a new software system by July 1, we will still be doing manual processes, and that is concerning to me. It also concerns me that I don't know why other towns have gone away from the bank and to a pay-as-you-go, but I feel like there may be some real reason to go that route. But that being said, as long as we go away from having that large liability on the books that we have to book on June 30th of every year with the bank, that because we have promised to pay it by an implied promise to pay, if we can go away from that, I can accept this proposal.
I think we're going to have to be honest with ourselves and the auditors that we're still going to have some liability as of June 30th, or as of July 1st. Now, I heard the chief say one time that, you got people that really want to utilize it, in a part of the argument a while ago, and then I've heard from the same voice, we've got the numbers stacking up against us, that they're still accumulating it, but I don't know the internal thinking of everybody. I believe I understand enough that it's not just snap your fingers and all of a sudden that those hours come down, that takes some prodding and pushing and some requiring. And so I don't just assume that that's just an easy job to accomplish. I would still prefer us to take whatever action that it takes to get us going July 1st. And I don't think we're going to get we don't think we're going to get a 5-0 vote on this. But that's, that would be an unusual thing, but that happens. Because I had so many questions coming in here tonight, I just can't all of a sudden just say tonight I'll accept everything that's in this package and I'm ready to go with it. I'd like to have a little bit. I've come a long ways, 2/3, 3/4 of the way there, but the folks that are, Ken, I think you said that you're fine to go with this package right now the way it is.
Well, Buck, I've gone back and reviewed, on the face page of this, I assume we could boil it down to A and B under the manager's comments and recommendations there. That's the essence of what the recommendation is tonight. And yeah, I think he's basically just boiled down the all the memos and so forth. Am I right, Mr. Town Manager, or are there
That's
other
correct.
things?
That's correct, with some input from staff. But I would say that we came into this originally because we had to book the liability for the auditing process. And, we worked to come up with a process that hopefully is going to phase that out, probably take a year, maybe a little bit longer. We had a concern that hours were being rolled over and we were having to pay those out when employees leave. I think we've adequately addressed that in the future plan. We had a concern that hours were being banked, which was allowing some employees, police officers, to roll those hours over to vacation or sick leave, which allowed them to retire early. I think we've addressed that by not allowing those hours to roll over anymore. So, and I know, there's some concerns about workload and some extra work that some others are going to have to do. So we've talked about software that's going to help alleviate a lot of that, maybe not every single step, but it's going to alleviate some. And there might be some nuances with the software. We might have to work out some other things, but from my standpoint, I was trying to come up with something that was balanced with some of the concerns I heard early on with trying to keep a benefit that we've had for the last 30 years. Albeit it's not consistent with what's on the policy, we were trying to come up with something that we could all live with, that we could turn into a policy. So that's kind of where we stand. We're here to do, whatever the majority of council tells us to do, but that's the intent I had as we started this process. So that's where we are.
I think one of the reasons that other towns have switched to pay-as-you-go is because it's another way of adding compensation. Yes, the numbers would cause an increase, but if you had someone, I think she said they started at 38 and change, and you divide 38.5 by 2,233 hours, you time it by 12.25, and you time that by 12 holidays, that's another $2,500 that police officers making during the year. You do hire employees, you're making more than that. If I'm just taking an hourly rate, the double time pay, taking that and adding how much more money an officer can make. Some can make in the 3,000s more. This is because of the 12 days. So I'm just taking an hourly rate.
Okay, good.
You're shaking your head. Is my math wrong? I just took a salary and divided it by 2,223, which gave me an hourly rate, and timed it by 12.25, then timed it by 12 again. So I think that's why you're seeing other towns switch, is because the compensation package is more valuable. I think, and sometimes nowadays it's viewed, just like longevity and other things, is viewed as more valuable. And so that's what I was looking at. I'm trying to give the officers more money. trying to give them more money, plain and simple. Trying to pay them more money. It's in a different way, and yes, it costs more money, but guess what? If we do these other programs, guess what? They're gonna cost more money. When we increase the pay, because of the pay study, we're gonna increase pay, we're gonna spend more money. That's just the cost of doing business. It's gonna cost more money, period, whatever route we go, whether we do holiday bank pay-as-you-go, we reincorporate longevity, we increase the pay salary, which we definitely gonna have to do. That's just the cost of doing business. It's gonna happen. So it's gonna cost more money one way or the other, whether it's $300,000 here or 150 or whatever it may be. There's gonna be a cost of doing it, and it's to help increase compensation and benefits for employees. So I'll just say that's the intent of doing what I was doing, but
If you're going to show
okay.
you make any progress tonight, on the agenda it calls for a motion to approve the holiday leave package program. That's too late.
Ken, you mentioned A and B. Is that, was that on the memo on page 48 or 47?
I believe it's 48, let me check. No, it's on page
49 and
47.
50, sir.
It's what I call the face sheet to the,
Oh, yeah.
well, it's page 47, at least on the page itself. I don't know if the tablet shows it. But again, to circle back, Mr. Kennedy, one of the reasons that I felt as though we had to move with this, we've talked about a time frame, and if we want this in essence to move along a smooth track, starting it in 2018, and the chief's committed to using, I believe, June the 30th as a target date to get these hours down. It seems expedient to me to go ahead and get that done. The longer we wait and do this, either we make a dramatic change or it's just going to take longer to resolve the issue.
I would add too, if I could, that we're going to have to give each of those non-exempt sworn officers 147 new hours as of January 1st, 2018. If we don't make some type of decision, those 147 hours for the patrol officers are going to continue to be a liability on the books if we don't make some change before those hours are required to be given to those officers.
Point well made.
I didn't get that.
Yeah, what he's saying is, we start a new bank starting January the 1st, which is in a couple of weeks, and if we don't make a change to the policy, the town will be liable for 147 times 50 officers that we'll have to pay unless we make a new policy that says those cannot be banked or paid out. They cannot roll over or be paid out. And there's another way.
If I may, on page 47 on your agenda form, item A says, the policy now is you will no longer have any payout for any holiday leave that is given to you. At a minimum, we need that passed if we don't do anything else tonight. But, I mean, we've been going at this a while, so I would hope that we'd come to some resolution. But at a minimum, item A needs to be in place before January 1, before we give them 1 hour that will become a liability for next year.
It's page, if you had a paper copy, it's page 47.
47, yes.
Okay.
Under manager's comments and recommendations.
Okay. So A is a statement, is it a policy statement?
It's the basis for a policy statement. It's not an actual policy statement. We would have to reword it so it would go in the personnel policy, but it's the basis of.
When's the first payroll going to be, when are you going to write the first payroll checks? When will the first payroll end in January?
The last payroll is December, which covers through
So by the time you write the paycheck in January, it will cover a period that extends into January, will it not?
Yes.
January, I think you said January the 7th, is that a Sunday?
Yeah, so almost a week.
Sunday,
Yeah.
okay.
For a week.
From Monday,
Yeah.
2 weeks later.
So, on January the 2nd, when we meet, there will have been nothing entered into any books on any accounting as to anybody being paid or not paid on January the 1st.
That is correct.
But the banking will have occurred on the 1st, well, unless we choose not to do it on the 1st, but we typically do it on the 1st.
You have to keep in mind that my payroll officer is out on medical leave. I don't know when she'll be back to actually do that process or train Joanne on how to do it. But it probably will not be done until sometime that first week of January.
But manually, I guess it won't be done, but it'll be implied that they got it on the 1st, whether it's entered in a system or not. So unless we make some change, it's gonna be implied, as we have for the last 30 years, that on the 1st, they got 147 hours. So even though it may not be manually in the system, but they're gonna think they got it, whether it shows up on their next check or not.
Correct.
So,
Well, let me just ask, I heard just what Pam said, and certainly I agree that there's merit in essence, approving item A. Of course, it's my view that we ought to approve both of them. If we do that, that certainly doesn't preclude what I think I've heard by some to suggest that the issue can be studied further. There have been several mentions that other towns have moved away from certain things, but to me, it's more critical to give that more time if you're going to study that and bring back some recommendation for us to ponder and look at. But it seems to me if we enact item A and B, that not only keeps us and corrects the issue that brought this up to begin with, and it moves us in the direction that we've all said we want to go, and that is to make sure we eliminate this liability that has been in place for some period of time, unbeknownst, I guess, to most of us, certainly unbeknownst to me anyway.
I didn't know till, what, last May or March? Was it
March.
March when we started? Yeah.
Respectfully, though, if we make the one change to eliminate the liability but don't have anything beyond that, it puts the chief and his command staff in a difficult position to communicate to the officers
Yeah.
what is coming down the pike. We've been fortunate this year when we started in March that we had 9 months to get to where we are today without having to make any changes, because January 1st of 2017, those hours were already put there. If we make the change to eliminate the liability starting January 1st, 2018, that fixes the liability problem, but now we have nothing to communicate to the officers with regards to what happens to those hours that they just received during 2018.
Thus A and B would be the preferred route to take, which is what I prefer. I may be the only one, but I'm prepared to
Well,
move
B,
that.
really one of the reasons B exists is that was amended from the previous, 2 meetings ago.
Yes.
It just basically says that there will be, that for sworn, non-exempt police officers, the council will have a combination of holiday bank or pay, or a combination of the two. That was just to make the policy consistent on January the 1st in case there was not a decision made. So really, if you make some decision tonight, you will not need B. But if you do not make a decision tonight, that you will need B to make the policy correct.
And that's where the
current policy.
difficulty comes in terms of communicating to the officers at that point with regards to, you now have 147 hours, we're no longer going to pay you out for them, but we don't know what else to tell them with regards to those hours in 2018.
Let me give you a short version in the way I think we can wind it up. Approve the policy that's recommended tonight. End of the first quarter, we get an update on how things are progressing on the drawdown. into the second quarter before July 1st, we get another update, see where we do stand. Hopefully, we're going in the right direction. If we need to take any tweaks in this policy, we can do that. But I say, prove it, review twice at least, and then a year from now, if we haven't reached a point where we think we got this issue resolved, it is a policy that can be changed every time we meet. And it will look like then that if we can't get it resolved, it looks like maybe pay-as-you-go is the way to solve it. So pay-as-you-go is an incentive, it's postponed, but it's an incentive to get it under control where we can all wrap our arms around it. And I would prefer that we get it all resolved during this next year and it would meet our obligation and be able to move on in a positive manner. I think you had a motion that was not seconded, but the only thing I would require is that we review it, say quarterly, and then review that is the progress on the meeting the obligation, and then review the policy if necessary a year from now.
I don't have a problem with that.
You put that, if you can you incorporate that to a motion then?
I'm sorry, did Ken make a motion?
Well, my initial motion was looking at what the town manager has proposed, and I was going to move that we, in essence, adopt that. I hear the town manager saying that item B would need some further wording changes, probably.
Well, if you adopt the policy on page 52 and 53, which are the same, one just is showing you the change, then item B is not needed necessarily, so. Because this will explain how holiday leave is being handled.
I'll rework it then and make the motion, clean it up. Move to approve the policy as stated on the written one on page 52 and 53, our page 53 and 54. Review quarterly, and that we review this matter in the time frame, the policy in general, 10 to 11 months down the road.
If you want to make it more official, you can cite the part from the personnel policy in the section.
Alrighty, move that we approve part 7, section 2 of that part that's entitled holidays and types of leave, with the provisions upon added regarding review on a quarterly basis.
You said part 7, Mr. Kennedy. Just for reference, what page is that on?
That's page 53.
53, okay.
It's
Motion, right, Bob?
yes, it's on your tablet. It'll show up 54, but on the written page it's page 53. Part 7, holidays and types of leave, section 2, point, which is holidays.
There's a motion.
Leave
needs a second.
section 2, and it's on page 50.
In section 4.
All right, is it section and 4?
Yeah.
Okay, and 4.
See right here. Oh, I see now.
The page prior is.
I would just ask, well, Mr. Kennedy, I think I could agree with that. Mr. Seckler is, well, does that accomplish what you understand we needed to? You and the chief and Pam?
I did not address the business about cleaning up stuff so that we're not carrying it on that payroll software.
Well, your motion failed for lack of a second. You start back over.
Right.
I appreciate that, and what I would say is that by reviewing it into the first quarter and towards the end of the second quarter, that we will be able to make a better decision and amend that if we needed to make a change to that.
All right, I'll go back to see if we can do it again. The original motion, section 7, parts section 2 and 4, be approved.
Well, I'm prepared to second if I understood, I think I understood what Buck had proposed. It's consistent with, I believe, what these three are looking to kind of clarify and move this forward. Am I right on that, Buck?
Yes. Part 7, sections 2 and
Right.
4, plus review,
Ken, did you say?
quarterly review. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, there is a motion and a second. All in favor?
How about asking for further discussion? We ask for further discussion.
All right, is there any further discussion?
Yes, sir. I'd like to just make a point that I am not going to support this, as I've stated, because I'm trying to increase the compensation with police officers, plain and simple. That's what I hear people want, they want nowadays. I fully believe if you showed every officer the hourly rate and what they would increase on pay-as-you-go, that your holiday bank pay survey would be quite different. If you did someone at a $40,000 salary, which is $18 an hour, they got paid extra for that day, 12.25, it's $220.50. Times those 12 holidays is $2,600. If someone had got paid $20 an hour, $44,000, $460, divided by 2,223 hours, that times the $20 hour by 12.25 is $245. Times it by 12 holidays is $2,900. I'm just trying to increase employee compensation because that's what we hear the people want. That's why I think it's the pay as you go. I think it's why the towns have gone that way. And I think that one day the town is going to be going that way because I think it's a benefit that in the long run will be more substantial and what employees will eventually favor. But yeah, the votes, what it is, that's why I'm voting against it. I'm not voting against it to hurt benefits for the police. I'm trying to give them another benefit. So that's where I stand.
I think Ray makes a good point there. Yeah, a lot of changes, it's going to be an adjustment to some extent. There's going to be a whole lot of discussion within the police ranks about, well, what in the world did you finally decide? And how does it affect me? And it's, if you've explained it 5 times to me, you might have to explain it to somebody else in your own ranks. Might have to come up with what you trying to summarize what we said 5 different times. But somewhere during the year, that question can be raised as a part of the discussion. We're making one change on you, you got to adjust, and police department, you got to adjust to draw it down. Now, you got this year to decide. Be thinking about it. Do you want to pay and pay as you go? Instead of making 2 decisions at one time, major ones, major adjustments. Talk about that. Don't have to put it in a motion, but if you would, have that discussion. Do you want to pay, or do you rather, which really does make a difference to you? The accruing 147 hours, or we're getting to pay? I'm not there. I hadn't been doing it, hadn't been subject to it. I don't know the answer, but you'll find it out.
I will absolutely do that, and I respectfully stand by what I expressed before as to what the police officers would tell you.
Okay.
Any more discussion? All in favor of the motion, vote by saying aye.
Yay.
The hell was
Well, I think I understand the motion. I thought I understood it, but I guess I'm having somebody's misunderstanding rub off. Quite frankly, as I said earlier, I'm wanting to do what I agree with Gray. If we're all of the same mind, we want to assist not only in the compensation arena, but in other benefits arena as well. If the action we are taking doesn't accomplish both of those goals, and I defer to the police chief and to these 3 standing here, then that's a major concern to me. Do the 3 of you see the motion that's before us as a positive outcome of why you have appeared here this evening for this whole discussion or not?
Based on what I think I'm being asked to answer, my answer is yes, with regards to what we've proposed here, with the caveats of reviewing it at the end of the first quarter of 2018, reviewing it again at the second quarter of 2018. If my understanding is that that's the question I'm being asked, then I would say yes. I'm comfortable.
Board to review how we're drawing it down in the first 2 quarters. We can review the wording at any time during the year, but we would unlikely to make any substantive changes during the year. We probably, because it would affect the whole process. So any substantive changes would be done a year from now.
Correct. Once we implement January 1st, I mean, we could make changes if that's what you wish, but it would be much more difficult. But my understanding is if Mr. Marshburn's question to all three of us, my answer first is what we've proposed with the caveat of the 2 reviews on the drawdown, then yes, I'm very comfortable with what that motion stands for.
And there'd have to be a decision too about how pending payout would happen for any hours
Right.
over 147 in July. Well, June 30th, I guess. And I mean, I'm not saying we have to do that tonight, but it would make it cleaner.
So I've heard from BD. Pam?
My answer is that you've effectively addressed my concerns about the liability that will be on the books. There will still be a remaining small amount of a liability on the books if we continue as it is. I still submit that this is one of 2 ways that you can accomplish the goals that you've set forth. That being the pay-as-you-go or the leave, we give them the holiday leave that is not allowed to be paid out at the end of their term.
So, Mr. Zuderman.
So I believe that if I understand what you're doing tonight is that you are voting to adopt the policy revision as recommended, which does, I think, 2 primary things. One of which is to stop the liability because it clearly designates that this is now use it or lose it time. And then secondly, it secures a holiday bank for the police officers to use on that use it or lose it basis throughout the year, which maintains the flexibility that I think is very important to them. And then with that, I agree, as Mr. Dickerson referred to, is that I think it would be appropriate or cleaner if you also voted for now to approve that payout June 30th of up to 147 hours. And I only say that from, as BD I think has alluded to, is I need to be able to take your message back to staff. And I want to do that completely. I want to let them know what the discussion was and what the suggestions were, and then what the ultimate recommendation was, so they know what that was, because I think they deserve and need to understand that as to where we're at. So given all that, I believe that what you're intending to approve, the new policy or the policy revision to reflect generally what practice has been, but specifically what it will be going forward, to eliminate the liability and to approve the payout with a quarterly review at the end of March, where we will ideally show you that we are on pace to do what we said we would do, which is get everybody to 147, and then a second review perhaps at the end of May. So we have a little bit of time there to deal with if we have to make a change, where ideally at the end of May I'll show you that we're done. And then from there, I agree with the review approximately 11 or 12 months from now to see that we've done what we said we would do and that the new system is working.
We'll take on Bill's hat for a second. He'd probably tell me, don't put any caveats in a policy that are only good for a short while. A policy is a policy, leave it as a policy. And then if you got any caveats, add them on in a separate motion. Would that be appropriate? I like the review. I'm not against what I said, but adopt a policy, then we can have a second motion that we're going to review on a quarterly basis, and we will address the business about the payout. Is that cleaner, Bill?
You probably have to, you've had a second to your motion, you probably need to withdraw that and have permission to withdraw it and then make a new motion, yeah. That's good.
And not trying to complicate it, but I mean, we got a motion and a second, could an amendment be made to cover the payout issue? I mean, I support what I believe is Chief's recommendation, that we go ahead and allow and incorporate that as part of the motion itself.
Okay.
If that's the case, I will move that we amend the original motion by incorporating the language that says based on what we're doing now, there would be a payout for any employees who
Up to 147.
That's
Yes,
correct.
Yeah, I believe that's right, yeah.
Not a guarantee, but an up to 47, because not everybody
Whatever
bid.
you have after
And-
June 30th.
Basically, that's a one-time payout on
Right.
June 30th, 2018, not a
Right.
recurring payout.
Right,
I'll second the motion to your amendment,
okay.
or I'll second the amendment. So we'll have to vote on the amendment, then vote on the
I believe that's
primary
right, yeah.
one. Call the question on the amendment, Mayor.
Okay, all in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Call the question on the
Madam Clerk,
primary
call the roll.
motion.
Madam Clerk, call the roll first.
Hold on. Poll the council.
Calling the roll of how we voted on the amendment, so you can
Right,
call,
I
yeah.
understand.
Don't do this often.
Councilmember Marshburn?
Aye.
Councilmember Behringer? Johns?
Aye.
Councilmember Singleton?
No.
Councilmember Kennedy?
Aye.
So now we're back to the original motion.
And call the question on the motion.
Question on
By the original, all in favor? Say
that.
Aye.
aye. All opposed?
No.
Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Aye.
Councilmember Behringer?
Aye.
Councilmember Singleton?
No.
Councilmember Kennedy?
Aye.
Okay, 4 to 1 vote, okay. I think the public would be proud of what we've done tonight. Probably take a lot of time to do it.
Thank y'all for your time and your effort and energy with this. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
All right, we're going to take a 5-minute break. Please come back so we can leave early.
We on manager reports
Yeah,
or committee reports, I guess?
committee first. Any committee report? Manager report.
Manager reports you have in front of you, not in your package, but the Garner info report. Then you also have a separate finance report. So if you have any questions about either of those two. A building and permit report. These keep getting longer and longer, which is a good thing. And then also, John's going to do a quick update on the Campo meeting.
Council, I just wanted to briefly update you on something that occurred at Campo. At their last meeting, the mayor was unable to attend that meeting, and Mr. Marshburn was otherwise engaged for that meeting. And the mayor was notified by Mr. Bill Morris with Morris & Associates that he planned to attend that meeting as the 2045 transportation plan was being adopted that day, and he was going to go speak in opposition to the way some of the alignment was drawn for the extension of Jones Sausage Road. Given that our delegate and alternate couldn't be there, I attended and spoke as a staff representative on behalf of both the staff and the council, just in acknowledgement of Mr. Morris's concerns. And what transpired, and the reason I wanted to update you, was that the Campo board was very understanding of the situation, and they made a motion to adopt the 2045 transportation plan with an amendment to the project code for Jones Sausage Road realignment to move it to a more westernly alignment. So all that really means is shifting it closer to the edge of the property line, very similar to something Mr. Bass had proposed years ago. So for the sake of transportation plan, it just means that a fairly wide squiggly yellow line will just move slightly to the west. And that seemed to give Mr. Morris some consolation. And then we will continue working with Campo to determine the best way and the best time to work on a specific alignment once the scoring for projects is completed in March. But because Garner was mentioned specifically in the motion and the way it was adopted, I just wanted council to all be aware of it.
Very good.
Thank you, John. Mr. Mayor, yeah, The original proposal was, do I understand, was going to take a good portion of what is now his parking lot or area there close to his building?
There's always been a line that drew sort of straight across his property to connect to Morris Drive. Staff's worked with some different alignments. We did not realize there was as much of an issue with the 2045 plan because, again, those plans typically don't have definition to them. But Campo's staff went a little step further and drew a little bit more detail this time than they typically would because they thought there was an opportunity for funding scoring in the upcoming round. And so the staff was able to, Campo's staff was able to explain to Mr. Morris why he saw more definition on the design than you typically would, and it was noted that we would try to work on an alignment. So I believe that his staff will be coming back to you in the probably not so distant future, depending on how the scoring turns out for those projects, to discuss when and if the town may want to participate in any design work to make sure that we can try to create a situation that all property owners along that corridor can reach some consensus with all the property owners involved.
Can I just ask one quick question because I walked in late? You're talking about the Jones Sausage extension towards Highway 70. That's what you're just talking
Correct.
about?
And Mr. Morris was speaking against it at the transportation plan, and an amendment was made on behalf of the town of Garner.
All right, other things I have, if you have not done so already,
On the north side of the railroad track, who owns the property that was John DeMarsh's property?
Where the road would realign through, Mr. Partlow owns that, and when he came in, Mr. Partlow that owns Direct Distributors Agri Supply, and when he came in for a site plan approval some years ago after purchasing that, he has acknowledged a potential dedication of a right-of-way for the alignment of that road. So we have a verbal understanding with well, actually some on paper, but not codified, but an understanding that we would need the right-of-way for that road to be straightened in the future.
Okay.
all right. If you have not done so, please let the clerk know if you plan to attend the Triangle Commercial Real Estate Conference on January the 17th, or the Progress in Motion Railroad Conference, January the 23rd to the 24th. And then also just want to let you know, I'm sure you all received an invitation, the Public Works Luncheon will be at the GPAC on Friday at 12 o'clock. So
it doesn't take too much time. Could I confirm with the town clerk now? I know the Progress in Motion, I think I'm on that list. Probably not on the other, right? I won't plan to attend it. Some people from the GDC will go to that. Yeah.
Would you like to be signed up for both?
No. I'll just do the Progress in Motion.
Okay.
Is the 17th one by Carolinic Realty?
correct, NAI Carolina. Correct.
Mr. Dickerson, that morning has also been confirmed. I think council's been notified, but that morning has also been confirmed for the TCC
that's right.
coffee chat in Garner at 9 o'clock.
Which will be a busy day.
But it's the morning for the chat, in the afternoon.
3:45 for Carolantic.
What day of the week is that?
Wednesday.
The TCC was the 17th at 8 o'clock in the morning?
9 o'clock in the morning.
9 o'clock. At GPAC?
No, here.
Oh, here, okay.
Go Garner Town Hall.
And I think that's all I have. Did I miss any other important event days? I think that's...
Okay, Mr. Attorney, you got 5 items or so?
Well, we have 3. We have 2 that are on the agenda, and we'd like to add 1 more. The third one, we'd like to add a closed session pursuant to NC General Statutes, Section 143, 318, 11A3, to discuss a matter in litigation, which is the Calvin Davenport, Inc. versus Town of Garner and ADW Architects, 16 CVS 15166. Motion would include all 3 subjects.
Council report. Doug, let's start with you.
All righty. In my notes, reference to the right place. Trying to use this pad, tablet, whatever they call it. Not as a sleeping pad. All right. John, have you heard, and I don't think anybody from engineering is here, but have you heard, what is the logic over at Rec Center that they're still working on the main building, but they haven't started trying to build any walls and close it in on the front part of the building? Any logical reason? Are they closing off access by trying to build up the walls to the front part?
I was not able to attend the construction update last Thursday. It was moved because of the holiday to last Thursday, and I was tied up for the day with Mr. Anderson, and I believe our engineer was as well. So I do not have an update this week, but if I can understand your question better, I'll follow up on it tomorrow.
Once they moved the crane out of the way, I thought they were going up with the front part, but
I believe there's still the pad to be poured before they would start doing that work, and that was scheduled to start, but I honestly don't know in the last few days if that's happened.
I'll follow up with Tony.
I know they had
Okay.
to readjust the depth on a water line that caused some delay, but we'll follow up and
Okay.
get you a more definitive answer.
All right, I'll catch up with Tony. Don't, you got plenty going on. It's the holidays. Right down Buffalo Road in the vicinity of where Misty Meadow, where if there's two entrances to Misty Meadow, there is a lot for sale on the north side of the road. And I don't know whether it's in a good position that would allow us access to, or where we would have any interest in it or not, about getting access. It may be too far north or west to get access to the greenway, proposed greenway.
We'll take it under consideration.
With you a little later in the night if we could.
Okay.
Yeah.
YMCA update. I hit very quickly highlights. Had a meeting this morning. Late January is the optimal time for them. They think it's a conservative date. They have really been pushing hard to get the outside things, and the issues of paving in bad weather is tough. Inside work has gone very well. I think Bruce Murray, who is the director there, is wanting to come to the town and to give us a report on an updated report, but he wants to have a more firm date. He had planned to come in December. That was not working. And he wants to talk about also, for the benefit of the TV and people that would be watching, to help advertise the fact that to encourage membership there. They're in effect offering something akin to charter membership. There's an incentive for doing that. Next item, would somebody please tell me, and I have to show my ignorance, there's a lot on the permit list about Evolve Drive. Where is Evolve?
The apartments on Highway 50, formerly where
Carl
the
Williams.
Wimpy Williams.
Wimpy Williams was, there's no apartments.
The big chunk of that was under mechanical, and they were getting mechanical permits, and that was just that, essentially that one project there. It's $11.6 million in mechanical permits, but that was a big chunk. Overall, I would say is that total permits this time value $18.6 million, big chunk. I don't know that I've ever seen one that high for a particular month. Could be wrong. Rodney, I'm not sure if the power is working to this desk or not, because I came in with 100% and I got it plugged in and she's dropping to 87%. I mean, I got plenty of power on my tablet, but somebody have to tell me later on, but I just happened to notice that.
I tested it before you got here, it was working.
It was. It showed that it was registering. When we meet with Chairwoman Holmes on potentially a work session, could we, so that we aren't up here and they are down there, could we start the meeting earlier? Is there a way to do it so we could meet in the where everybody's sitting on the same level?
I know there's a request to have the meeting in the evening.
Yeah.
So I don't know how late into the evening we would have to go, but we could reconfigure the room or whatever you want to do, however you want, so we're all sitting on the same
Yeah,
face to face across from each other.
and possibly whoever, depending upon the number, and if we got room in there,
Yeah.
invite them to dinner with us.
If it's, well, depending on the number of council members, it's more than likely going to be a public meeting. We, at a work session, it's probably not going to work to have it in there as far as public access. So we could use the training room. It's probably the best alternative since there's already tables up there.
So we could start the meeting up there and then recess and come down here.
That's one option.
Can you do the whole
Yeah,
meeting? Nothing wrong with doing the whole meeting?
The only thing is I don't know how we would do the recording and the audio visuals, how all of that would work as far as getting it on, well, we don't do TV, but how the recording would work. But if we figure that out, we'll
We could use a
Look at-
computer.
do the retreat. Yeah.
Bottom line,
And I'm not sure what other items we might have and whether we'll need the audio visual here, so.
but you're
we'll-
thinking right now, probably the earliest would be is a work session in January.
Yes, the earliest.
Okay.
We'll have to check with her schedule and staff schedule.
Would it be appropriate to ask them to come so we could have dinner with them? Or they could have dinner with us?
Yeah, we can extend that invitation.
Okay, and then still we'll arrange whatever it takes
Yeah,
to meet on the same plane.
yeah, we could do that.
Okay. Good, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I was just going to mention to the council, I did send a memo to Rodney and John and Matt and Stella back in November after our retreat. There's some things I had jotted down, but opportunity to bring them up at the retreat, it wasn't the place to do it. So I was just going to give you a very brief overview, 4 items. I talked about the South Garner Greenway project. Maybe we'll get an update on that soon as to where that stands for progress, because I get asked about it occasionally. Second item was something I mentioned before is Wi-Fi availability at some of our parks, some of our shelters. I get asked by citizens about this. So I just have put it out there to see what kind of information we can get back. I also mentioned that the concession stand, I know at South Garner Park when I'm there as a coach with soccer, as I'm an assistant coach, I'll rephrase that. With soccer, I get asked many times why the concession stands are closed, because the concession stands are really just operated by Gaisel with some of their softball, baseball, and ask that we consider looking at some of maybe our civic groups, see if somebody wants to operate. I mean, we paid for a nice new concession stand. It needs to be open more hours than it is, in my opinion. Ask staff to consider that. And also an issue that some of you probably heard, I'm sure Mr. Marshman is familiar with this because of his running and walking on Avisboro and Buffalo. At the intersection of Avisboro and Buffalo, I've had some situations where I almost hit a runner who never slowed down, never blinked. As I approached that and came in so fast, I almost hit him. I've had other people who have had instances where they were walking in cars, came up to the stop sign and almost hit pedestrians. And I've asked staff to try to look at ways of signing that intersection better than it is. I travel all over the state and I see signing at all kinds of walkways now. It's just amazing what they're doing, even on state roads. So that's just 4 items I wanted to bring the council up to date. And I didn't ask staff to bring me a report back the next day. I know these things are some long-term issues, particularly the Greenway, but just something I wanted y'all to be aware of. Also, I mentioned this to Rick, Mr. Mercer, as we've talked about doing some great people in Garner, and he's talked about the interest in doing some kind of a program on the history of the older part of Garner. I mentioned a longtime resident, Bill Creech, who I've talked to several times. He brought me a check on Sunday at church when it was Garner had a bank, Garner Banking and Trust Company. I got a copy of it to show you.
Great.
From 1926, $15 made to his father and signed by his grandmother. And it's got some scribbling on the back. But what was neat is, and you can see it a little bit in here, you didn't stamp them back then. They ran into a punch page, got little dots, you can see where it says paid. When you see the check, you can see it clearly. It was pretty cool to look at it and to see it say paid and some kind of code on there. But when Garner had a bank, and I don't know who knows what building that might have been in, but Anyway, Garner Banking and Trust Company, here's a check from 1926.
That
A
is-
copy of it, you're welcome to.
That is now Full Bloom Coffee Roasters.
Okay.
We know exactly, and I'm sure they'd love to have a copy of that as well.
Well, I can get, Mr. Creech, you can tell me I could have the check, and I told him no, it was his, but I'll be glad to get this to them if they'd like this. It's not in color, obviously, but it is pretty neat to see something that's that old, and he's got the original check. So I mentioned that. Thank you, that's all.
Jackie,
One thing, sometime back.
welcome back.
Thank you. Glad to be back, and I think y'all done a good job. I watch you on television, and you went very well. Sometime back, I mentioned about 50 Highway Bridge, and I understand that in 2020 they're gonna remodel that bridge.
That,
And
I
I
think that's the
hope they're
right time
planning on
frame.
doing something. Have you had any reaction from them since the last time that I spoke to you about it?
Oh, we haven't had any, I think they're in the planning stage, but I haven't had any updates lately. I don't know if John or the planning department had any updates.
Continue to be in touch with our planning department, and so we expect to be able to sit down and review the most recent set of plans, I would think in the next 30 to 60 days. I believe that they are still hopeful to have public input meetings in the spring of next year.
Well, they need to do something to that bridge now. That, it's worse than Vandover Spring was a couple of years ago. And the joints between is getting wider and wider.
Right.
Someone's gonna get hurt there. If you check into that, appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
That's all I have, Mr. Webb.
Kathy,
Yes, sir. It's either 2 or 3 years ago at our planning retreat, we talked about having some kind of workshops regarding working with the younger generation, speaking their language and learning how to work with them and recruit them. But we never did proceed with any plan there. So I'd just like for us to bring that up for consideration. Maybe the manager can look into it for us. And along those lines, in this last month's issue of the Southern City magazine, there was an article about the very issue, one of the issues the chief brought up tonight about retention with police officers in Chapel Hill and their success and how they've handled that. And one of it was using social media to attract applicants, and they seem to have had a flood of applicants. So I'd like us to go back and revisit that idea of learning more about how to relate to and draw in the younger generation as far as how they communicate and how we can reach them to get them to come and look at us as far as employment. Second thing is, I've been approached by some merchants on Main Street about getting a speed table on Main Street. Having trouble with people just kind of flying down through there and ignoring anything and everything. So if we could look at that. I don't know if it's been brought up before or not. But
Ms. Manager, we've asked, Kimley Horn is currently doing streetscape design, which includes improvements to the parking lot behind Main Street and aesthetic improvements. So we've passed that request along to Kimley Horn to evaluate what would be the most effective in that area.
Great. Do you
That
have
was
an
done
idea
in
of
the last 2 weeks.
what time frame as far as a recommendation?
They will probably have some work back to us, I would think, in a 30-day timetable. And I've talked to folks that were requesting that as well, and there's some pros and cons to, because of the length of that section, where's the most appropriate place to put which type of calming device. So since Kimley Horn's engaged working on something in that vicinity, we thought they could probably give us some good ideas. I do not, if we need to have some done, I'll let you know. I don't know. Mr. Chalk has talked to them, so I'll see if we need to have any speed tests done. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, I'll be brief, Mr. Mayor. To Gray's earlier point about the runners or joggers there, particularly at the intersection of, Buffalo and Davisboro, some would probably observe that some of those people are a little crazy. They don't pay attention. But I know for me personally, when I get there, I like to catch the eye of the person in the vehicle and not proceed unless they are waving me across. But I think some runners, sometimes they have things in their ears and they just, don't pay attention, but it can be a dangerous place if you don't watch out. I want to thank the town manager for responding to one of our residents, sort of sympathetic to his concern, John Roebuck, I believe, having to do with the parking over at the old school commons. I would surmise that possibly it's a maybe even a bigger issue during the holidays where there are a number of events there. I've attended several there, but I'm not sure if you know, there may be a little bit more to the problem he mentioned there. But thank you, Rodney, for being sensitive to that, and hopefully we can try to make sure that the residential parking is not something that the general public is picking up over there when they attend events. So
Yeah, we, Parks and Rec staff had some subsequent conversations with the gentleman and explain the process and, you know, do what we can to make sure it doesn't happen again, but also explain that we're going to be building a parking lot addition in the near future, hopefully, and that will help alleviate some of the issues, and that we do try to police those items, but we don't have somebody out there 100% of the time, but we think it'll be alleviated in the near future.
I think, again, when the new parking lot's done and repaved and restriped, because it is kind of hard, some of those, it can be hard for some people, I'll rephrase it, I can read it, but some people, it may be hard to see on a nice new surface. It might look, where it says reserved for resident or resident, whatever it says, I can't remember. Because I go Meals on Wheels, I try not to park in it unless they're empty and I'm just going to be in for 2 minutes. I will use one, but yeah, I think when it's resurfaced and restriped, it might get their attention more. Maybe resident doesn't need to be in white, maybe resident needs to be in yellow when it's redone. Or reserved or resident, whatever, it needs to be in a different color.
yeah. Other than that, I think that's all I have. I know we have a session to get to. So
Matt, you, John, have anything?
I just want to comment on item number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about people's passing on the double lane between Creech Road and Center. I don't know who turned this in, but it's good because somebody's going to get hurt.
It's picked up a lot lately too. A lot of people have been doing it.
You know, when you go down Garner Road past Andrew, the same thing happened.
yeah, I did want to just mention one other thing. It was nice to attend the Mayor Association last night. Our mayor was there, and as they sometimes do, they sort of go around the room to you know, recognize various people, and they almost forgot us, but the mayor very appropriately didn't let them forget us. So, but it's always a nice occasion, and I thank the town for letting me tag along, I guess. But
I missed the Christmas parade, the first one that I have missed in years. I started to come, but I was told that I didn't need to be outside during that weather, so I missed it. So, but I saw some of you on there.
I want you to know that a half dozen times I did yell, "Eat more candy and visit your dentist." So just
You took my spot.
I didn't see it's your spot, but I did yell, "Eat more candy and visit your dentist," just for you.
Okay.
Sam, you have anything? Sam?
Real briefly, Metro Mayor's Conference on December 7th and 8th in Wilmington, and the group met and talked about the future of the organization. Friday morning, they discussed how they wanted to proceed and discussed for a long time the pros and cons of being organized separately from the league or trying to associate with the league. And Mayor Vaughn of Greensboro, Mayor Manheimer of Asheville, and the majority wanted to remain separate from the league. The mayors of Raleigh and Charlotte did not want to proceed immediately with hiring a new executive director. They wanted to explore more about you know, our common interest in how to proceed and think more about the specifics first. The majority decided to go ahead and hire a new executive director and remain separate from the league. However, they wanted to continue to discuss with the league how they might affiliate and work together. The day before, we toured the Port of Wilmington and historic downtown and met with the entrepreneurial community there. Most interesting part of that was one of those folks was starting a new microbrewery in Wilmington, and he was reaching out to the gang members in Wilmington, the young folks, and working hard deliberately to hire them away and maintain a relationship with them, and was having some success with it. And so that was interesting, and went to the Board of Education this afternoon to the work session. They just got a text from one of the members who said they named a new principal tonight for South Garner. His name is Roderick Brewington, and I don't know much about him except that he has been an assistant principal at Enloe. So he's a new principal, Roderick Brewington, at South Garner.
When South Garner opens next fall.
Right. Right. And as far as I know, and Mr. Hillman is going to remain our principal at Garner Magnet. So
They name a principal for Bryan Road Elementary?
I don't know about that. She was just telling me about the high school, and they were also this afternoon talking about transportation and trying to hire bus drivers. Sounded kind of like our discussion tonight. And they were really struggling to fill 150 more slots, and they're going to need probably at least 70 more next year. And so having the same issues with not having an infinite amount of compensation to hire the folks that they need to hire. So thank y'all.
I meet tomorrow at 2 o'clock with a family member of a pretty prominent family in Garner who wants to donate $100,000 to the rec center. On the alert for that. Okay, we're going into closed session.
Mayor, move we go into closed session pursuant to NC General Statute, Section 143.318.11, subset A, subset 4, to discuss economic development pursuant to NC General Statute, Section 1.4.3-3.8-11-5, to discuss possible real estate acquisition and the town's negotiating position regarding such real estate. Is that covered?
Third one, litigation. 143, 318.11A3, to discuss Calvin Davenport versus Town of Garner and ADW Architects, 16 CVS 15166.
And stated by the attorney, a specific litigation case, Calvin Davenport versus Town of Garner.
Second. Motion made, second. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Okay, the council's been in closed session discussing several items. Councilmember Singleton will tell you what we've been doing here.
Yes, the council discussed possible real estate acquisition, the town's negotiation position regarding such real estate. No action was taken. We discussed potential economic development. No action was taken. And there was also discussion of the resolution of a lawsuit that was mentioned in the motion before the closed session between the Town of Garner and Calvin Davenport, and a potential conclusion to that lawsuit was discussed with the attorney.
Move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
We'll be.